years ago with information that most people said, oh, was just too insane to possibly be true. What do you mean weather control? What do you mean they can flip switches and make it storm over here and drought over there and flood over yonder? Well, you know what? Now folks are starting to understand that this is not just science fiction, but science fact. But you know what? A lot has happened in the past 10 years. And our next speaker has put out some other books linking into what's going on with the, oh, go ahead. He just loves to do that, doesn't he? Anyway, in the past 10 years, Dr. Beigage has done a whole lot more research, and now it's not just about the HARP project up in Alaska. It's about so much more. And he's here to bring you a little bit more up to speed and get us all a little bit more educated. So with that, it is my great pleasure to bring to the stage Dr. Nick Beigage. By the way, Phil, do you want him with a wireless thumbs up or thumbs down? And this mic is good? Okay.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Pastor Butch for bringing me down, and I want to thank all of you for being here for this day. You know, this has been an interesting event for me because there's not many that just deal with the issue of mind effects on a lot of different levels. And so I appreciated all the things that our other speakers had to say. And I want to give a little bit more background on myself. I have a doctorate in traditional complementary medicine. I also work as executive director of the Lay Institute on Technologies, Inc., which is a Texas-based nonprofit that's currently funding a lot of my research, a lot of the things that I'm doing these days with the help of the Lay Institute. I also have 5 children, and in March I had a couple of grandchildren. So we've got a pretty good range of the kids. My youngest is 14, my oldest is going to be 30 this year. Alaska has done me okay in terms of aging. I know somebody told me today we're expecting an old man, so I'm sorry to disappoint you. The good news is I hope to be around a lot longer to do a lot more work. So with that, I want to get into this issue. I want to start with where really my work began, behavior over huge geographic areas. I produced a paper in that in 1995. And it was just about the time that we were releasing the first book, Angels Don't Play This Harp, which got into a little bit of this issue. Now, mind control as a concept actually made the news. How many know The Economist as a publication? Okay, a few. One of the most prestigious publications in the world. The Economist cover story, May 25th, 2002, the future of mind control. And what this was discussing was the ethical considerations of this technology as it was advancing. I want to go back again a little bit in time. In fact, I'm going to go way back, and I'm going to start to build a foundation for how this science evolved and where it began, and it's going to dovetail into some of the other speakers' comments that you've already heard today. If you go way back to the very beginning, when this was being looked at aggressively, you have to go back to the first serious studies of hypnosis back in the 1880s, when they were really getting into this. By the 1920s, Harvard University had actually set up a lab where they were looking at hypnosis. And they had a guy named George Estabrooks that was in that lab at Harvard doing this work. And what he determined through hypnosis was that 1 in 5 subjects could be brought down to such a deep hypnotic state that they could then fracture the personality deliberately and create the super spy, which is what he was looking for. With 10 months of work with an individual, they could take and create 2 separate personalities, one with full knowledge of this one and this one with no knowledge of anything. So they could send this individual into a third country, was the scenario that he gave, where we could then have a super spy that if he got captured, they'd have absolutely no memory of their former experience. The problem is when you split personalities, you don't put Humpty Dumpty back together again so easily. But this was done by Estabrooks. It actually was written up in his book called Hypnotism. It was written in 1940 1943. It was republished in 1957, actually amplified, and you'll see these references right there. In fact, he considered that every hypnotherapist should have a stable of this type of experimental subjects for these kinds of experiments. He encouraged them all over the country. The next book that I ran into, when I see an author that kind of strikes me, I go to Library of Congress, I see everything they've ever written. And I'm particularly interested in what they wrote at the end of their life, not so much at the beginning, because I want to know how they summed it all up. And you can get a lot from that. I mean, you can get all the thousands of pages that the guy probably read, neck down to one publication. But what I found, the next publication, 1947, was a book called Spiritism. And it was on spiritual mediums by this same guy, Estabrook's. And all of Estabrook's work, by the way, by 1935 was classified. It was no longer open to the public except for what he published in these generalized books. But the one on spiritualism was interesting because he believed that it wasn't some other entity coming in, but was some aspect of the individual's personality coming out. Which we can all have arguments about that with the guy, but the fact that he was drifting this direction told me a great deal about the underlying aspects of the personality writing this book. The other thing that concerned me was he would continue to say throughout his material, something you hear from the scientific community all the time, if somebody misuses this, it's not my fault, I'm just a scientist. Well, I challenge that, and I challenge it every time I hear it, because anybody being given the gift of that kind of creativity from the Creator himself has an obligation to use it correctly. And when they don't, and when they know it's been misused, they are as guilty as the person.
Man, one after another, how do you follow that act? Holy mackerel. You know what? I think he's right, though. I think that every single one of us has the capacity to tap into a source that is so powerful, that is all-powerful. And I don't think that any computer made by man can ever even come close to matching that. Of course, we can't do it by ourselves. So where does that power come from?
Power hour. All right, before we wrap this thing up, I want to ask, has anybody out there ever taken in a stray kitten? Raise your hand. Your hand went up first. Your hand went up first. Okay. Stray kitten, raise your hand. Okay, your hand went up. Okay. How about a